Okay, so this is where we left off with Chapter 19. We were talking about transplants. So you are going to want to know these terms. These are different terms for different types of transplants, also known as grafts. So an autograft is when a person's own tissue is used on their own body. This can be done with burn victims and using skin from other areas of the body to help in healing from burns. An isograft is a transplant from an identical twin. We talked about that in class, about how identical twins have identical DNA, so you don't have to worry about transplant rejection. An allograft is a transplant from another person, and a xenograft is a transplant from an animal. There was a lot done with pig heart valves and other parts from pigs that are actually fairly compatible with humans. So that's one as well, although now, technology is moving in other directions, but it certainly is still used today. Bone marrow transplants is when the bone marrow is obviously transplanted, so it's not the same as an actual organ transplant. It's kind of going in the direction of using stem cells instead of donor bone marrow, just because, again, the technology with using stem cells has advanced so much in the last few years. Immunosuppression is the calming down of the immune system so that rejection does not occur. So this is done with various different types of drugs. So after someone gets a transplant, their immune system is artificially suppressed so that the host body does not reject the organ. So we've talked briefly about cancer before. So cancer is when a person's own cells mutate or transform and start dividing when they should not. So essentially what a tumor is a tumor is an organ that is there but shouldn't be there. So when a tumor develops, it's going to take nutrients, it's going to take oxygen, it's going to take everything away from the surrounding area, and that's why it does so much harm. So you would definitely want to know the term immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is using the immune system to cure or treat cancer. That is a huge, huge area right now of cancer treatments, and doctors have really gotten to the point now where they're starting to treat cancer on an individualized basis. So instead of just trying to fight the cancer, they're actually trying to help the person's own body fight the cancer. So doctors are starting to find that cancer is a very individualized type of a thing, and not everyone's going to react the same way to the same type of cancer. So the idea behind immunotherapy is to stimulate the immune system with some sort of infectious agent in the hope that an amped up immune system will go after the cancer cells. Of course, one thing that you have to be concerned about is the development of autoimmune disorders, because if you are stimulating the immune system in a much higher way, you can actually get the immune system attacking other parts besides the cancer cells. So the key thing is to get the immune system to target the actual cancer cells and nothing else. So there are cancers that are caused by viruses. We talked about this before. They're called oncogenic viruses. So what's being done is to develop vaccines against the viruses so that we can actually stop the cancer. So they are considered to be cancer vaccines. And then the last thing is immunotoxin development. So again, just using the immune system to battle cancer in all the different ways that we possibly can. So if we can develop certain chemicals that can basically be toxic to the cancer and destroy the cancer, that's another area of research and development right now in the fight against cancer. Immunodeficiency is when the immune system is not present or when it's reduced. So there's a congenital form of immunodeficiency called DeGeorge's syndrome. DeGeorge's syndrome is when the child is born without a thymus gland, which means they don't have any T cells, so the major part of their specific immune system is missing. If you've ever seen movies about Bubble Boy, basically a child who's born and then has to be kept in a complete and total sterile environment because any little germ or any little infection can kill them. that's what this is. So this is basically the congenital disease that a child is born with, in which they don't have the major branch of their specific immunity. Therefore, any infection or disease will be very, very dangerous. And then acquired immunodeficiency can happen from drugs, from cancer, or from infectious agents. And the main one when we're talking about an acquired immunodeficiency is AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, is the virus that causes AIDS. So HIV is the virus, AIDS is the disease that it causes. It's believed that HIV came from a simian immunodeficiency virus, or SIV, that's found in Central Africa. So it essentially mutated and crossed species and was able to infect humans. We already know that HIV is a retrovirus, which is capable of doing reverse transcription. HIV has spikes, which allow them to attach better to the helper T cells, which is what they infect. The virus enters the cell, performs reverse transcription, turning RNA into DNA, therefore taking over the infected cell. The other thing that makes HIV especially bad is that it can be lysogenic for many years, and it can also mutate pretty rapidly. So somebody can have HIV for a rather long time before they ever even get any symptoms, and that's why it's very important for people that are sexually active, people that use IV drugs, very important for them to get tested for HIV so they don't spread it to other people. So most of you guys probably know this, but just in case, we're just going to cover the basics here. So stage 1 of HIV is asymptomatic. This can go on for 5 to 10 years, and a person could be spreading the disease. Stage 2 is persistent yeast infections of the mouth and throat, as well as persistent fevers. Stage 3 is the clinical development of AIDS, indicator disease or tuberculosis, pneumonia, toxoplasmosis, and Kaposi sarcoma. And the official way that it's documented is when the CD4 count is less than 200. So HIV is a very unusual virus because most viruses, the way that you contract them is usually how they affect you. So an example would be like a cold or the flu. You get it from respiratory secretions, and then it affects your respiratory system. Most viruses, that's how they work. How you get them is how they infect you. But HIV is very strange because you get it from sexual contact or from blood-to-blood type transfusion or drug use. And it goes after the immune system, which is very, very unusual. It gets in you in one way and then goes after a totally, completely different part of the body. So it's very strange. I do have a video that has more information about HIV that I'll post to Blackboard. It's really just kind of an additional, education type video. The stuff that you need to know for the exam is everything that's within the PowerPoint. But it's a really good video about how HIV is actually able to infect cells and what it does. And there's a lot of research being done about modifying the genetics of the HIV virus so that it cannot infect the helper T cells. So we're not really killing the virus, we're just taking the virus's ability to infect us away. So by manipulating the genes of the HIV virus and changing enough of the virus, if enough of the virus gets out that's modified, we won't have to worry about it infecting us anymore. So that's a big area of research right now, is trying to get the HIV virus basically not really killing the virus, but just stopping the virus's ability to infect us and come after our T cells. So I'll post that video in a little bit. This is it for Chapter 19, I do believe. So I'll just go ahead and end this video, and then we will pick up with Chapter 21, which is the next chapter that's on the next test.